Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast with me, Jonathan Puddle. This is episode 62. This is a wonderful, exciting discussion with Courtney Burg. Some of you will have been following her on Instagram already. She used to use the handle Mombojombo. Now she's under Courtney J. Burg. And she's like this wonderful voice in parenting yourself, bringing trauma-informed care to raising your children, and just all of your own, unpacking your own triggers, understanding that when things go funky with our children, very often it's pointing to unhealed pain in our own lives. And so we had a broad discussion today all about healing yourself, parenting your children, dealing with your inner child, and learning to be present to oneself. So if you enjoyed my discussion with Andy Kolber or my interview with Gary Thomas, then you will really enjoy this. My apologies, the audio quality is not quite my standard. I actually lost it all after I had just finished editing and tidying up and clearing everything else lovely. I lost it. My app crashed, and yeah, let's not even talk about it. Anyway, this is just not quite up to my normal standard. My apologies for that, but everything is still pretty good. So, I'll get out of the way here. Oh, sorry, yes, by the way, I'm on holiday now. So, after today, there'll be a break from the podcast until after the new year, and then we'll be jumping right back in. I've got a bunch of amazing interviews recorded and in the can, ready to share with you all. So, here's Courtney Burg. Well, once again, thank you so much. I'm pumped that we get to do this, and I don't know how long I've been following you, but I have, your Instagram is a constant source of inspiration, and like, oh yes, that makes so much sense to me. So yeah, this is so fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and what has brought you to, what's the Mombojombo journey?
Yeah. So I live in South Florida. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a believer. And I'm also sober. And that's kind of where Mombojombo started. I found myself pretty strong in the grips of drugs and alcohol. But I was a performer. I was an achiever. So I didn't think that I was somebody that needed to stop because I was getting all of my things done, you know?
Yes.
And it wasn't until I got married and thought my life was going to be fulfilled and better, and my husband found me drinking at home alone, that I realized, oh, this is a problem. Like, I didn't dodge the genetic bullet of addiction, because there's a lot of addiction in my family. But like I said, I thought, well, I've got straight A's and I'm, doing things in my life. And so there's definitely no way it's me. And so from that, I went and got treatment, I got help, and I really began the work of like inner child work and just looking at my childhood and looking at boundaries. And shortly after, I was pregnant. And so that brought on a whole nother list of challenges that scared me to death. But it's also how I've gotten to where I am today. And so I picked up, my pen and started writing again. I've always journaled. I've got boxes of journals in my attic, and I've always loved the craft of writing. It's always been my friend. But as I began drinking and doing more drugs and running from myself, it was really hard to do that because I didn't want to see what I was thinking,
Yes.
And so my husband encouraged me. He said, why don't you share this with people? And I thought, no way, because at that point I was sober, but the shame was still so thick, like I was like, no, I just want to get better and move on and not even look back on this. I didn't want anybody to know. And I did that for a while. I did that for probably 6 months to a year. And so finally I thought, you know what, enough with this. This thing is not going to run my life now in sobriety too. I'm not going to hide from this anymore. And so I started sharing it just with my friends, and they were like, wow, I had no idea. I knew you'd kind of disappear for the weekend or cause I was I was a solo drinker. I would come home and numb, or I would leave the party and get another bottle of wine, or I would have a couple before going. Like I just wanted to be out of it because my life at that point was just too unmanageable. And so the sharing with other people, the connecting with other people is really where my healing took off, because I realized I'm not alone, that while people might not struggle with drugs and alcohol, they struggle with, sex, they struggle with gossiping, they struggle with spending. It doesn't matter. They struggle with food.
Yes.
The list of things.
Your brokenness is going to manifest.
It doesn't. And I realized, oh my God, this is a language that people understand, but we're so afraid to talk about it. And so I kind of just took a leap of faith and was like, you know what, whatever, I'm going to go for it. And with that, the community has been built. And I always say that they help me heal more than I help them, because I don't plan posts. I don't schedule posts. It's very organic. Because I want to be real about what I'm dealing with people. So that's so it's been 5 years from that journey.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
How did that, you talk about doing your inner child work. That's language that I've come to in the last year or so, that really I was like, oh, I've been doing a measure of this for some time, but within my Christian context, I didn't have that kind of language.
Sure.
We had sort of inner healing, but inner healing was often sometimes kind of like a shortcut to avoid dealing with pain.
Right.
Sit down with a therapist and it's like, hey, this might take 6 months or a year. I'm like, no, I just want to do some special prayers and have Jesus take it all away.
Sure.
How did you get into that? And what did that begin to look like for you?
Well, first of all, it sounded like hocus pocus to me. Like I was like, this is baloney. I don't have to go back and like look at my childhood, and there's no little kid inside of me. Like that just sounds ridiculous. And then the more I started reading about it, and the more I started kind of just like being open, I realized that, in order to move forward, sometimes we do have to look back, and not to stay there, but just to say, hey, that happened, or this didn't happen, and I needed it to happen. And now I know how to give it to myself. And so in terms of like Christianity and God, I'm a firm believer of miracles, and I'm a firm believer of prayer, but I'm also a firm believer of like, it's a daily thing. Like it doesn't just go away, And so part of the inner child work and the healing work is really just tuning into that. For example, if my husband upsets me, oftentimes he's triggering something inside of me that reminds me of like my mom talking to me a certain way as a kid. It's rarely ever what he's doing in the moment. I tell people often, like everything has been done before, but I want to jump on my husband about it. And so inner child work has made my marriage better. It's made my parenting better. It's made the way I work with people in the world better, because I realize that I have control over myself, and I can dig in and say, hey, God, I'm going to use this trigger to teach me about myself and the areas that I need to heal. And so I don't think that it's one or the other. I definitely think that it's prayer, it's God, it's inner child. It's all of it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I don't think that we have to pick. I think that God provides us tools that we can use, and he's like, hey, this has been here for you. And it's working, because like I said, in those moments where my child triggers me, I realize it's often about me and nothing about them,
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I can relate to that so much. Like I've been a very emotionally forward kind of guy and have struggled with that, especially like as how I fit into masculine culture.
Sure.
And in the last couple of years, I've been becoming a bit more at peace with my own emotions. And back in January, I felt like the Lord say to me, Jonathan, I've surrounded you with people who love you, and you're the only one who doesn't believe it. And actually, you're the only one who can bring your heart to believe it. And I had no grid for that. And I did a podcast right here with a guy who said to me, Jonathan, you could spend a whole year just learning to love yourself. What would happen? What do you think would happen?
Right.
Someone says something to you and it lodges, it sticks in you, and you're like,
totally. But it's only because the hole was already there to be lodged in, right? Like, and so, we search so often for people to affirm us and to accept us and to remind us of our greatness. And we spend very little time doing that for ourselves. And that's what inner child work is that it's literally saying, I don't need anything in the world to complete me. Like, God made me whole. And yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, there's areas of my life that I wish were different, but I'm learning to love myself. And I will say 5 years ago to now, it's like I rarely get rocked. I rarely get offended because I almost always know how to go back to my center that says, Courtney, like, you're taking this personal, and remember, it's not about you. Like, they're not, and it connects us back to our people, right? Like, that's what we ultimately want in life, is to be in relationship with people. And so when we're walking around wounded and pissed off at everybody and hurt by everybody,
yes,
and blaming everybody for the way that we feel in our life or the circumstances in our life, it just disconnects us, right? Like, we're running around and then we just continue trying to search and figure it out. And I think that's where a lot of people come to my page and say, hey, like, this is a source of healing that I can actually do on my own time, but it's very, I say there's crickets in the beginning. Like, it's very weird. You're like,
well, definitely.
Like, okay. But it's a mindset shift,
Yes. I mean, I went after that podcast with that guy, and I went to a conference, and I felt like God was like, yeah, it's time for you to go and sort this stuff out yourself. And I wasn't following you at that point, or really anybody saying those kinds of things. But I had grown up with in a tradition that has a very strong value for letting the Spirit lead you.
Sure.
And so I was like, all right. So I sat down on my couch and I put my hand on my heart, because I'd seen a guy do that in a video. And I was like, Jonathan, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And crickets.
And crickets.
And crickets. Right? And totally it was weird. You know what comes to my mind is Home Alone 2. When Kevin's playing the video out of the bathroom, and Tim Curry's the hotel concierge, and he's like making him get on your knees and tell me you love me. And he's like, I love you. And he's like, you got to do better than that. And I'm just like, this is weird. But I kept going. And honestly, within it moved beyond crickets. And then it moved to like this hurting child, like, that I've been ignored all these years. And then it moved into like rage.
Right.
Like, I would be saying loving, committing things to myself, and I would feel the rage within that's like, you wouldn't sacrifice a single friendship for me.
Right.
You would rather spend time with any single other human on this planet than with me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hold on now. This is real. This is very real. And aspects of that, feel like I've been holding this kind of loosely together for a very long time.
Sure. And a lot of us do come from like really quote unquote healthy families. And they say, well, I don't have any wounds from my childhood. But the reality is, you had a coach or a teacher or an aunt or a sitter or a boyfriend or a girlfriend that reinforced a little seed that was planted early on. From 0 to 7 are like the most formative years of a child's life. And something happened, and then happened again in a different way, whether, like I said, a first romantic relationship or a job that didn't just work out. And it happened, and it reinforced that belief that I'm not enough, or that I can't be loved, or that I'm not successful, or whatever it is. And what happens is, again, when you're in the kitchen with your spouse, or your child comes in and they trigger you, it really isn't about what they're doing. It's about that belief that you've been carrying with yourself. But we don't want to look at that belief, because we're like, well, no, I'm successful and I love myself and I'm enough. But the reality is, it's not true. Like, we really do hold a ton of insecurities that we've carried with us. And so when you say you have that rage, or a lot of people feel sadness, that's that inner child saying, wow, you're finally tuning in a little bit. Like, this is me inside. And, it's just imagery where, you're learning how to set boundaries for your inner child. You're learning to show up for your inner child. You're learning to advocate and protect him or her which, people don't have to use the inner child, lingo if it's not comfortable for them. But it's just basically saying, hey, like in the Christian world, God gave me this one life, and I'm going to do what I need to do to the best of my ability because it's a gift.
Totally. And I know I run into people who are like, oh, well, Jesus is enough. And I'm like, well, Jesus is enough to work with you to bring all your broken parts back together. How about we just complete that sentence? Because there's so much scripture of, I will take your stony heart and give you a heart of flesh. I will, the Lord, he makes me lie down beside still waters. He restores my soul. Like there's all of this motif all throughout scripture of the broken being made whole. And yeah, I think as I realized too, for me, is I think the big surprise was that as I began to care for my inner child, which actually as a kids pastor is language that works really well for me, because I can sit down with a kid. No, it was somebody said, I was reading somebody and they said, when was the last time that you sat with a child or a person who was hurting and consider your stance and the compassion that you probably showed to them quite naturally? Now consider the last time that you did something stupid and how did you speak to yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I am not kind to myself.
Right.
But if I was a child, maybe I would be kind to myself.
And it helps. It helps
Totally.
You say, like when we make a mistake, we like self-sabotage and we beat ourselves up so bad. But if it was our child, we would say, hey, it's just a mistake. We'll just try better next time. And we're on to the next thing. With us, it doesn't work that way. And the same thing, I wrote a post a couple like months ago, like similar to what you just said. We don't like to sit with ourselves when we're hurting, right? Like we'll show up for other people, but we don't like to sit with it. We like to run or numb or, angry, like we're angry. We have so many other responses rather than just sitting with it. And I think that my husband will tell me a funny joke every once in a while when it comes to like God and he says, you ever heard the joke? And I'm like, I know it's coming, right? I've heard this joke about the guy who wanted to win the lotto. And he said, God, please, I really want to win the lotto. And he didn't win. And then the next week, God, please, I want to win the lotto. And finally God said, listen, you've got to buy a ticket, right? Like you've got to buy a ticket. Like I can only do so much. And so when we say that Jesus is all I need, absolutely. Jesus is everything. But we have to be willing to buy the ticket, right? Like, and that's what I think some of this work helps us do. He's like, I'm here. I've always been here. I've never left you. However, there's things that thankfully we have in our world today that we can utilize to, I think it doesn't separate us from him. It brings us closer to him. And it also, again, brings us closer to the people that we love, and I think that that's the most important thing, because hurt really does separate us,
Yes. Well, that's right. And so that's fascinating, because I always thought for the longest time that it was kind of like sin that separated us. And I had this very like, sin is the bad stuff that I do. But why do I do the bad stuff? Well, because I'm a bad person. Mm-hmm. And as I began to connect with my inner child and go through this journey and understand actually what's happening in the brain in response to trauma, and understand, that trauma is everywhere.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm like, I don't think so much about sin anymore as just simply like, I'm looking for comfort. I am desperate to not feel this.
Totally.
And so, So it's like, what do we do with a hurting person? So what is God's orientation towards us if he just sees us as like the hurting, wounded people that we are? Like I'm finding there's no room for punishment in my framework anymore. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like it doesn't work punishing ourselves. It doesn't work punishing our children. It just doesn't work, because, punishment just grows shame. And we know what shame does. Shame keeps us quiet, and it keeps us sick, and it keeps us hurting, and it keeps us alone, and nothing good comes of that. But I think that there are natural consequences, and I think that there's discipline, But going back to what you said about like, I kind of just thought I was a bad person, or, it's like, no, we're just hurting people, or we're just scared people. When your body goes into a physiological response to something with, like, say, trauma with children, they fight. So that's anger, biting, bullying. They freeze up. So they just withdraw. They're like unemotional. They don't want to do much. They're just detached. And then there's like a new response that they talk about now is called fawn, which is a really, like, I feel like I'm a fawn. It's, you people please, you have no boundaries, and you just show up and you give of yourself, because again, especially in the Christian world, we're supposed to love and give and sacrifice, but we forget the other half of that. Like, but no, we're supposed to be good stewards of our time, of our talents, of our resources.
Yes.
And so, like, it's like the scripture has been cut in half,
Totally.
and I'm like, no, that doesn't mean that. It means God says, I gave you this one life, this one opportunity, and you've got to protect it, and you've got to protect your people, and so I think that when you reframe, again, it's a mindset shift, whether it's yourself or your children or your spouse or whoever, is oftentimes a behavior that we see as a response to being afraid or being hurt, and I think when we think of it that way, again, we can take it less personally.
Yes, and we're moved with compassion, which surely is the most consistently, like, the consistent response we see from the character of God in all interactions with people.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the thing that took me by surprise, well, and many things took me by surprise on my own journey, as I'm sure you can imagine, but when I suddenly started to realize, I feel like actually I'm partnering now with the work of God. Like, I'm becoming a conduit of God's own love for myself. And I've felt like I've put that on everybody else. Like, I've made everybody else be God's love to me.
Right.
And, and then I got married and hoped it would be my wife. And then we had this major blow up on our honeymoon that we discovered recently we've still been acting out of, like, 14 years ago. Some major dysfunction in our marriage for both of us, because of something that happened on our honeymoon. And so I'm like, well, then my wife's not going to fulfill those needs. So then I've kind of gone the bad boundaries route and found all kinds of other people who satisfy my needs emotionally.
Sure.
And then that's obviously reaped all kinds of mistrust in my marriage that I've then put and blamed my wife. And so it's like this whole year has just been like this wild journey where God's just like, actually, I've been here loving you this whole time, and I have surrounded you by people who are part of that journey, but there's this huge missing piece that looks exactly like you. And when I realized that's actually, like, bigger than me, that actually God has this agenda of wholeness that I get to partner with, then suddenly it's really dignifying. Like, it values my humanity rather than just I'm trying to escape my humanity.
Well, and it's less exhausting. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like for me, I can relate because it was drugs and alcohol, and then it was my husband. And then there was a part of me that thought motherhood would fulfill me. And I think a lot of women go through that, like, kind of depression of like, oh my God, this doesn't complete me. Yet society makes me think I should feel blessed all the time. And I do, but I'm also really tired and really, like, wanting to use my brain, And so I think that, we have to come to the end of the road over and over and over to realize that we don't have to go down that road anymore. Like you said, God has always been there. And if we can just learn to turn inward, and not just with prayer, but like just really connecting with who we are, like, and whose we are, like, just really having, it's just less exhausting. And when I say that this healing work, I say it lightly, because when you do it long enough, it becomes integrated into your life. It's no longer this thing that you have to do. It's like you want to do it. It's like brushing your teeth. You're like, I know I need to do this, and I like doing it because it makes my teeth clean, And so it no longer feels like work. And what happens is, if you do it long enough, not only does it become integrated into who you are, but you're also pouring that over into the relationships around you. Like
Yes.
you're freeing other people, because no other person wants to hold the responsibility of being that God in your life. Like, that's heavy, right? Like,
Yes.
my husband doesn't want to be my all, and my kids don't deserve to be my all. Like, I'm burdening them with this responsibility of fulfilling me. Like, how unfair is that?
Yes.
And so now we can all be these free beings that love and connect and support and encourage, but that we have one God,
Yes.
like, and that's his job,
Yes.
and so it's incredible. But I can totally relate, because I've like I said, I've gone down many paths that led me back to me and God. Like,
Yes.
okay, I get it.
But like you touched on earlier, like that we love others kind of at the expense of ourselves. Like it's like we've been fed this, we say, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Great. Love others as you love yourself. But we've kind of like love others at the expense of yourself, I think,
Right.
is kind of the way we've translated that.
We have.
But like the original literally is like intrinsically love others as you love yourself. If you don't love
Right.
yourself well, that is a crappy deal for every person around you.
But here's the thing, like, I think that not only have we translated it differently, but that it becomes now this like enmeshed uh, symbolism of like, okay, but I'm supposed to love my neighbor. And that means I have to invite them over every weekend when my family cooks out, or that means I have to overlook when he gets plastered at my kid's birthday party, or that means, no, it means none of that. It means I love you, even if it means from a distance, even if it means I have to cut you out of my life, even if it means I tell you no, like time and time again. When my husband told me no over my drinking was the greatest act of love I've ever experienced, right? Like, a husband or a wife, or, when we have addicts in our life, we think, well, I'm supposed to love them and accept them and be there for them. I call BS. Like, no, like, Jesus got angry. Jesus put his foot down. Jesus said no. And I think that we believe that Jesus was just this like gentle man that walked around in a robe and never like raised his voice. And we forget the alternative side of him, which was like, no, like, and I mean it, like, we won't do this anymore. And so I think that we just have to be, I did a workshop with Dr. Cloud, and he wrote the book of boundaries. And I just like, he's a mentor of mine. And when I read that book, I thought, here is my key to freedom, because I was really struggling between Christian life. How do I love God? How do I love Jesus? How do I make sure that I'm showing up for people? But then I'm also sick and I'm ill. Like, I have shingles on my body. I'm not sleeping. My back hurts. Like, I was drinking. I was running from myself and from everyone in my life. And I was like, what do I do? Like you said, what do we do? The others, like, what does it look like then? And that book really revolutionized the way that I believe God wants me to run my life. Like, he gave me a set of tools that I can use, and it doesn't make me a bad Christian for using them.
Absolutely.
And
we'll take a quick break to thank my Patreon supporters. I do not take any advertising on this show. Obviously, I do point to resources produced by the people I talk to, but that's not because I'm paid to. It's because I like supporting people. The people who support me are the ones who make all of this work possible. Podcasting and writing, pastoring is my full-time work. I'm not paid for any of it, and so my Patreon supporters help me care for my family. So thanks to Chris, my latest supporter, and thanks to everybody who is supporting me, whether you're giving $3 a month or 10 or 25 or 50 or more. All of you are appreciated, and I'm so thankful for you. I sent out some Christmas cards just the other week. Hopefully those will be arriving with you all shortly. So if you want to support me as well and sow into this work, then please go to patreon.com/JonathanPuddle. You can support for as little as $3 a month, and that is a huge blessing to me and keeps this show on the air. Thank you all. Back to Courtney Burg.
And so I think we just have to be careful when it comes to scripture, that we're not interpreting it and punishing ourselves in the process, because I think it happens a lot, and we punish the people around us too.
For sure. I did an interview earlier this year with Gary Thomas, who's got a book out on when to walk away and finding freedom from toxicity. And he said to me, Jonathan, we see Jesus as this constant martyr, that in every situation he's this martyr. He's like, Jesus went to the cross one time, obviously very, very importantly and willingly. But there's all these times where Jesus bolted, where Jesus whisked himself away in the crowd because they were trying to kill him or throw him off a cliff, or like Jesus actively resisted being physically hurt.
Yeah.
And we kind of don't hold on to that, as you said, in our narrative.
We forget, or we're not taught it, and society that doesn't sell. Like, let's be real. It's not a sellable like scripture. Like it doesn't sell. It doesn't sell on t-shirts. It doesn't look pretty. And there's several boundaries that Jesus made where, he separated himself from the disciples to pray. Like, I need alone time, right? Like, we feel guilty taking alone time. He walked, he got movement, he ate well. Like, we forget that.
He's right? Like really holistic for some reason.
Yeah. Like, it's like, we think of him, like you said, as the martyr, and the sacrificial, act of love. And we forget all the other aspects to who he was and what that models for us now in our life. And I think it's unfair for this generation and the next generation if we continue to paint that picture, like, I think that we can be fiercely devoted to God and fiercely rooted in boundaries and love and a commitment to healing, because then we don't then pass on the unhealed wounds that our ancestors carried. Yes. We're saying, like, I'm going to blow the whistle on this.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to find a post of yours here, and it's probably a little while back, so I don't remember now. But, I've read you write things about, those gifts that we can give to our children of doing our own heart work, of healing, of not passing on that non-function to the next generation. Mm-hmm. Where would you say, obviously we say where do we begin with that in terms of our own journey, but maybe just in terms of a parenting context? That's a train.
That's a train. Sorry.
In terms of parenting context, where would you see making some of that shift for parents who have grown dissatisfied already with, the tools that they had, the kind of harsh disciplinarian approach, but they haven't really felt like they had permission to pursue an alternative?
Well, first of all, that was me like 3 years ago. And so my daughter's 4, and right around 1, they become real people, like really opinionated, really like they're walking, they're kind of talking, but kind of not. And they're like little monsters. Let's be real. Yes. And that was when I realized that, I was spanked. We talked about that earlier. I was spanked. I was, raised Irish Catholic, and it was like, you don't talk back and you don't, and so I was very afraid often of my parents, but I kind of believed that that's just what parents do, sure. And so when I became a parent, even when I was pregnant, my husband were like, yeah, we'll spank. We were like, totally, we're going to spank. And then I had this little baby there, and I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm not going to hit her, And so, when I began initially being triggered by her behavior, I would slam doors. I would throw her in timeout. I would grab her by the arm and walk her. And I'm definitely not proud of it, but it's the truth. Yeah. And I would go in my room and cry. And my husband and I were disconnected. And I just was like, this isn't working. And she started laughing about timeout. And I didn't want to be this domineering parent. I didn't want her to be afraid of me. But the truth is, we parent the way we were parented. Yes. There's apparently like 20 trains going by my house right now. I don't know what is going on. There's like a train brigade.
It's okay. I like trains, so.
I do too. We've always lived near this train, but I didn't realize this was such a popular hour. So, I feel like we parent the way we were parented, and a lot of people become parents and say, I'm never going to act like him or her. but you do, because it's in your conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
You will respond exactly how your mom responded. You will respond exactly as your aunt or your dad or whoever took care of you the majority of the time. And so for me, I had to kind of make a choice. Am I gonna start responding differently, or am I just gonna do it this way because that's how I know how to do it? And I decided to say, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna do it different. And I always tell people, when you rewire your brain, so this is going to go from like kind of the spiritual to the actual chemical, physiological side. So when you rewire your brain, you have to drive down that road. So, your old conditioning, the way you were parented. So for me, I'm a yeller, right? My mom was a yeller. She would spank us. We'd get sent to our room. I remember crying my eyes out, going to sleep, waking up. Nobody would talk about it. Right? So that is what I just thought was the right way to do it. Now, that's the road I've always traveled in my brain. Okay. And if I want to rewire my brain, I have to choose another path. Unfortunately, that path is like covered in debris. There's trees and you don't know where to turn, and it's just really uncomfortable.
Yes.
But in order for it to become comfortable, you have to do it over and over and over and over. And so I will tell you, in the beginning, the resistance was so high for me. And then slowly I would like do it right. Right, meaning I would get down on her level. I would lower my tone. I would check my body language. No, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to draw. Whatever I was trying to get her to not do or to do differently. And I didn't do timeout anymore, and I didn't hit, and I didn't, I comforted her and I connected with her, because again, behavior often in a child is an unmet need.
Yes.
And when they're tantruming, when they're both of my girls were horrific tantrumers, like slobbering, fists pounding on the ground, rolling, scary. So, but when I learned about that's a survival response in their brain, so they're going actually into the primitive lower brain, they literally black out, right?
Yes.
And so here I am saying, you need to knock it off, or you're going into timeout, or we don't do that. They're blacked out. You're wasting your time.
The prefrontal cortex is offline. There's no logical reasoning capacities.
They don't even have the developmental ability. So I'm asking them to speak a language they don't even know how to speak. And then I'm getting more mad because they're not listening. And then I want to get physical and like put them in their room because that's what happened to me and that's what I think is right. Or even if I don't think it's right, that's how I respond, because it's a conditioning, it's a reaction. And so part of healing and acknowledging triggers and sitting back and saying, wait a minute, I don't have to respond that way anymore. And then choosing to do it another way, that road then begins, like it starts to become paved, right? Yes. Like it's a little less scary. There's less resistance. And then now fast forward 3 years later, like I rarely raise my tone to her. I never slam doors anymore. I have a 2-year-old, right? So I got to do it again, like all of it. And yeah, there's moments where I need to walk away, but I'm not going to punish her for a behavior that she can't control. And we connect and we play after and we move on. And if we need to talk about, I always say, save the teachable moment for after, like talk about it later. You don't need to talk about it in that moment where they're scared and angry. And so, I think that that's part of what has worked for me, is that just acknowledging again that I've got power over how I respond, and it breaks cycles. And so now I'm parenting them. Hopefully they'll want to bring some of this parenting with them, right? Yes. Like they're not going to not want to do it this way. And we're connected and they feel safe. Children more than anything need to feel safe. Yes. And, we, I think as parents, often parent from a place of fear, which says, I'm in charge. You need to do this right. You need to use your manners. You need to share, because we think that that's the right thing to do. But if we really looked underneath that, it's because we're afraid to look like bad parents, or we're afraid that our child's going to turn out bad. And I just don't want to be prisoner of that anymore. Yes. I want my child to feel safe. I want them to regulate with me, right? Like if I'm slamming doors and if I'm screaming, guess what my child's going to do? Slam doors and scream, right? Yes. Like but I want them to chill out, but I'm not chill. Like, I'm like, you need to calm down, and so we have to regulate with them. We have to co-regulate. We have to model that, but it's really hard if you weren't modeled that as a child. So it's important for parents, especially, and caregivers and teachers to check that,
Yes.
to check that childhood and say, what did I get? And what do I want to give? Because then we can take back our power and we can consciously decide.
Yes, exactly. When I was spanked, as we discussed, and never even close to abuse situation. My parents were very kind, very loving, and always explaining things. But I realized, I'm like, you know what? I think actually those conversations that we had, they're the ones that did the work. Like the spanking didn't accomplish anything. Mm-hmm. But like you said, it sets us up. I remember when my eldest son was, like 2 or 1, just getting into that age. And I remember the first time I spanked him, he immediately turned around and slapped me in the face. Mm-hmm. And I could not figure out a way to explain why my action was okay and his was not.
Right.
I was like, to a 1 or 2-year-old, yeah, okay, so this won't work. And we began to, get into guys like Dan Siegel and understanding time in, and a bunch that we did instinctively, like you said, but then thankfully, once the boys grew up, because we have 2 boys and then a girl, but she's kind of like hit a whole new set of triggers for my wife and I that like was like, she's just different. And just the other night, actually, I followed some of your advice on the co-regulation front, where, oh man, it's like we make so much progress, and then I feel like the temptation is like, okay, sweetheart, you're really wired up. You need to breathe. But again, I'm locked up. And so
totally,
she was crying unconsolably. And because I had laid with her, and then she was like, no, now I want mommy to lay with me. Now, this girl is 7, and mommy laid with her until mommy could not tolerate being there anymore, and mommy had left. And that was just too sad of a happenstance. So I'm now back with her, and she's like sobbing to the point of like hyperventilation. Mm-hmm. And I got really frustrated. And then I suddenly remembered everything. And I picked her up gently and calmly, and I held her to my chest while I breathed.
Yes.
Tell her to breathe, but I practiced it.
It's amazing what they pick up. They pick up what we do.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
she came down in like
right
15 seconds.
Like,
I was like, you are kidding me.
She feels your calmness. There's a thing called mirror neurons, right? Again, going back to like a physiological standpoint, like when I see you pick up your drink right now, I want to grab my tea. It's just like, I see it. I'm like, oh, I've got my tea back here. Right. We're kind of reminded of mannerisms, or, if you see somebody smiling, you kind of like, you're like, oh, I'm a little bit happier. Like, I want to smile, know? So we have these mirror neurons. So when you're breathing like that, and your facial expressions are calmer, and you get down to her level, and your body language, for me, my body language and my tone are the biggest challenges, because I can get really snotty really fast, and I can totally get the cold shoulder, right? Because again, I think it was because, not to blame my parents, but like I got sent away when I would have a tantrum or get upset, or we would disagree, and then we wouldn't talk about it. So there was this cold shoulder for a few days.
Yes.
And so by nature, that's what I do. And I have to fight past that. And again, I've gotten better at it. But when I show myself as being calm and regulated, they totally mirror that. I mean, and they want to mirror that. They don't want to be upset. I think that that's what's helped me too, is like, they don't want to be shaking uncontrollably. They don't want to be snotting. But if you look at it as like they're scared and they're hurting, I think as parents, we take it, the anger level, right? Because we're all tired and we want to go to bed and just go to bed. And, it's like, it's hard to be in a family. Let's be real. There's a lot of personalities, a lot of needs. Like, it can be crazy. But if you look at it in the moment, like, this is my responsibility to show her calm, like we can do it. But I will tell you, I can feel when you said like I could feel myself getting angry, the fact that you even notice that is a win, because oftentimes people just they just go into that anger, like that spiral.
Yes.
And like noticing is so powerful, because when you notice, then you can pause, and that's when you can drive down that other road, right? That road you're paving.
Yes, that is profoundly what happened.
And then it's a win, and then you celebrate it. Don't forget that, because in the beginning I used to never celebrate it. In my mind I was like, man, like, because usually like 3 times in that day I did it wrong, and then that one time I did it right, but I look at the 3 I did wrong.
Sure.
I'm like, no, that one time, that's paving my road. That's amazing. Like we have to celebrate the wins, you know?
Yeah, and that's going to be harder for some people than others, right? If you're I mean, if your Enneagram biases you towards like truth and justice and things like that, and you're always condemning yourself. Thankfully I don't live in that space most of the time.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love what you said too there, just about that kids don't want to be in that freaked out space. Like children naturally want to mirror the behavior that they're witnessing. Like that's
totally,
you are their everything. And so it seems really terrifying to vocalize this. Okay. So I'm going to vocalize it and you can tell me if it's okay. But it seems like maybe we should be spending less time, telling them everything we want them to be doing, and maybe just doing it ourselves.
Totally. I think that we need to be spending like 90% in that zone. And that's why, again, doing the work on ourselves, a byproduct of that is our relationships, which is parenting, which is breaking cycles, which is, I think it just, another thing I wanted to mention when you were talking about that moment is, I don't know if you know much about attachment theory, but I love attachment theory. And one of the parts about being like anxiously attached as an adult is often because as a child, we had a parent that was our loving, nurturing caregiver, but we also had the same parent that screamed at us and spanked us and sent us away. And it's very confusing for a child when that person in their life is both.
Yes.
Right? Like it's really confusing. And so if you think of like an animal, here you are feeding me, cuddling me, nurturing me, tucking me in at night. But the second I step out of line and I have a big emotion, you can't handle it. And now I'm being punished for that. And so I don't know where we stand.
Yes.
And I like to also refer it to like when I'm having a bad day or I'm having a bad moment or something scared me. And I was, crying and talking to my husband about it. How would it feel if he just like sent me into my room or like spanked me? Like, right? Like, it's like, no, like you don't hit me because I'm sharing with you this big, if anything, it's a gift that our children come to that, come to us for that, with that, because, and so when my child tantrums now, I look at it as an opportunity to connect and to regulate with her. I literally can see it coming and I'm like, okay, here it comes. Here's my practice. And I can take a breath. I check my body language. I check my tone. I work to co-regulate with her. And then we always connect and find safety and play afterwards. Because every single time I do that, it lets her know that mommy is safe. You can come to me with anything, right? So talking about biblical standpoint, there's nothing too big for our God, right? Like we want to be that in our child's life until they can depend solely on God. Like that's our responsibility, for their independence to be on us, and then it's to be on God, right? And so, but if we can't handle them in their worst, like if we can't do, it's like God doesn't just push us away when we're having a tantrum. Could you imagine? We'd all be screwed.
That's it.
We'd all be screwed.
I was discussing some of this a couple of years ago with a friend. And again, I didn't have the language for it. At that point, I was just like kind of from instinct. I know this doesn't work. And partly I'd already connected the dots where I'm like, I know this is not the way the father responds to us. And this friend of mine doesn't have kids. And she's very kind of like driven. And she's like, no, it just doesn't seem, I think you really need to be strong on that discipline and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, there's obviously a lot you can get into there. But I said to her, when was the last time God sent you to the corner to think about what you've done? Like
Never.
Alone.
Never.
And she broke down right there. And I realized, okay, this is actually clearly like something that you're working through. I'm not going to I didn't realize, but I'm not going to push. But
because we don't
right?
want to be that way as parents. That's the problem, is we don't want to be that way, but we don't know how to do it any different. And so we're afraid. So when our child acts out, we're afraid. We mirror that to our child. And so now we're just a fearful family living in a house together, right? Like tiptoeing around each other. And like you said, God has never once said, whoa, don't lose your temper with me. Whoa, don't cry those tears. Whoa, don't turn your back on me. But when our child does that, oh Lordy, like we like to be boss, you know? And it gets us nowhere. It gets us nowhere. I mean, if we want to talk about unconditional love, that's where it's at. In the moments that our child is the least deserving of it is often when they need it the most. Just like us, you know?
Yes. Okay. So we're living, let's say that we are in that house full of fear. Where would, if you were to give people kind of like a simple practical nugget to start that work themselves or to continue that work for themselves?
Sure. So I think, it's easy as a parent to say, well, how do I fix it with my child? And you fix it with yourself first. And so I think that the biggest tool that I have used is, for parents, I have a breaking free journal, which I use, which I created for people to use. And that's on my website. They can get that later. That helps you really look at triggers and boundaries. Again, it's implementing it into your own life. So then you can model it for your child. And that's when that relationship gets better. And I think that the other thing that people really miss out, and especially Christians, I guess I could just stereotype that, is we think like if we pray, right, then we're done. Like we've prayed, we've connected with God, and we're done. But I think it's important to really spend that time praying, meditating. And I like to I turn in. Turn in. If it's your spirit, if people listening right now, if that's not their thing, whatever it is, it's to get quiet. And because I think some people, maybe not your listeners, but are a little intimidated by prayer. They're like, what do I say? Who is this guy? What, And so I always recommend just spending 5 minutes alone, just really carving out that quiet time, because what that's going to do is it's going to bring to the surface often the things that we are staying so busy avoiding. Right. So, I know I'm bringing up my husband a lot because I just think that it's an easy example, but like, say you're having marital issues and you really think that it's your partner. Like you really are just like, they're doing X and Y. And if they would only change, then I'd be happy and I'd be less resentful and whatever, if you spend that 5 minutes, it brings so much clarity and peace. I mean, set your timer if you have to, because I think that what we're doing culturally is we are a culture of, we're task oriented. Like we have to like jump out of bed and get on with our day and get our kids ready for school. And we're not connecting to who we are. Right. And so 5 minutes a day for me, I include journaling and prayer in that. I also include breath work, but I think that the quiet time will help people wherever they're at in their life, in their challenges, in their healing. It allows a moment to bring it to the surface, because you don't know what you need to fix until it's there, you know? Yes. But if you're not quieting down enough, you're never going to get it, And so just spending 5 minutes sitting outside alone, not with your phone. You can people can meditate with music or not. I prefer not, because I want to hear my thoughts. I ran from them long enough, you know. Spend 5 minutes alone and just really tune in. And then for me, the second half of that is journaling, because I find that when I put pen to paper, it's like talking to a friend, and I'm able to really look at my marriage, my parenting, and I'm really able to say, okay, this is an area I want to work on. Like my breaking free journal there's areas that you can work on each day, because I think that it just becomes too much when we're like, I've got all of this to work on. Yes. I'm not going to do any of it. It's too much. And so with it, I have, boundaries, I have trigger work. There's different areas that you can pick depending on what you're working through that day or that week. And you can look at it and you can say, and then you can look back in 6 months and say, whoa, that doesn't even bother me anymore. Like I've totally overcome that, Yes. And the problem The problem with this is it's so easy that people don't do it. That's the
Yes.
truth. It's so easy. It's like, how can 10 minutes change my life a day? Well, it can't if you don't do it, you know? That's for certain. But that's what I would recommend for people. If they're like, I've been praying, I know that I'm being triggered by my children, or I'm in a new relationship romantically, and this guy is just not, doing it for me. And I think it's because it's stuff that I need to work on. Or even, I tell people, even in their careers, and there's a boss that's just like talking to them, and it's really affecting them, it's often because it's reminding them of something from their childhood or their early formative years. And so you might not ever get back to that one moment or that specific person or that circumstance, but it will help you lift the veil of it, and begin to move
Yes.
forward. And so that's what I always recommend. Again, very simple, but that's often why people don't do it, because it's so easy. They think it's not important.
Well, because I guess it feels like that whole world is like this mystical, shrouded, just pain center of trouble. So why go there? And it seems so insurmountable that it must require an immensely complex solution, or years and years of therapy. And obviously some people are going to require years and years of therapy, but either way. Thank you. I like that.
Well, and not the problem. I'm all a fan of talk therapy, but the hurdle with talk therapy, and I think that this new age of therapists are really catching on, is that talk therapy, it doesn't address all areas of your brain. So a lot of your emotional memories, you're only getting to the surface, but you're not getting to the subconscious. And I feel like the subconscious is what helps us. We can dig deeper into that when we really spend time with ourselves, journaling, and just like I said, like digging in. There's nothing to be afraid of. What is more scary to me today is allowing my subconscious and my conditioning to control what I do.
Yes.
That's more scary.
Yes. I remember the moment when I felt the pull to a false comfort that was familiar to me. And I suddenly realized how damaging that would be to me.
Totally.
And I was like,
totally.
Oh, wow. I don't even want to damage myself.
A lot of us are living asleep. Like we don't even, but that's the beauty of this work, is that if you spend some time digging in a little bit and really asking yourself some hard questions, again, my journal works. There's plenty of other prompts out there. There's no perfect right way. You have to find what works for you. But if you start really tuning in, I guarantee that you'll find that often the conflict that we face in our life is from unresolved pain, hurt, trauma, insecurity. I call it enoughness. And until you get to the root of that and begin healing it and, setting new soil and allowing that to grow, you're going to be living from that point of not feeling enough in every area. And that shows up with, like you said in the beginning, that shows up and it manifests in your body. It manifests in your relationships of like, my wife's not fulfilling me, my job's not fulfilling me, my, whatever it is. Well, that's because it's not meant to.
Yes.
Yes.
I feel like we could do another whole discussion on like,
I know,
intermediate level, kind of like, how do we deal with ourselves? Courtney, this was really, really great.
so fun.
Where can people go and to get your book and learn more about you and follow you?
Yeah. So my website is mombojombo.org. And then on Instagram, my handle is at Courtney J. Burg. And then on there, you'll see in my bio a link that has the blog I just shared with you. And I have my Breaking Free journal guide in there. If people are just kind of like, I want to get started, but I don't know where, spend 5 minutes a day, print that out. It's, like I said, really simple. You just have to do it. And one of the best ways to begin inner child work is showing up for yourself in those ways so that you can rebuild that trust in yourself. And I think that's it. My website and Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Courtney, would you pray for us as we
Yes,
start to try that journey for those who are like, what?
Oh, yes, I'd be honored. Yes. So, Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much for giving Jonathan and I a few moments together this morning to connect and to share with listeners some of the insight that you have given us. Lord, I just pray that whoever is listening today, that they are just reminded that it's not too late to begin healing, that they are enough, and that you created them to live whole and to live free and to live empowered. And that can begin today for them. So I lift everybody up. And in your heavenly name, Lord, we just thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure you go and check out Courtney's resources. They're linked in the show notes. You can sign up for that journaling resource she mentioned and follow her on Instagram. As for me, I'll be taking a little break. We'll be back in January with a whole bunch more wonderful interviews. And if you're not following me, make sure to follow Jonathan Puddle on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can stay up to date on this podcast as well as my other writing, and I've got a bunch of exciting book news that will be released very shortly, so you can stay in the loop. You can subscribe to my emails. You can read my stuff at jonathanpuddle.com, and I will see you all soon.